Good evening, Park Church family. It is Wednesday, February 17th, and this is our midweek pastor's moment. Last week, let's go back 2 weeks ago, I talked about the vision that the Apostle John had of Jesus while on the Isle of Patmos. It was a great vision. It was gripping. It was glorious. And as John tried to find the words to describe Jesus in his glory. And that Jesus then told John to write on a scroll 7 different letters to the 7 churches in Revelation. Last week we talked about the Ephesians church. They had worked hard. They tried their hardest. They kept busy at good deeds. They believed all the right things, did all the right things, but they had lost their first love. And so Jesus rebuked them and said, you must get back to doing the things you did at first. Don't just remember from where you've fallen and return to your first love relationship. And today I want to look at the church at Smyrna, which had not lost their first love. They had remained vitally alive and fresh in their relationship with Jesus. And Jesus' opening words to the church in Smyrna were very carefully chosen. He said, "To the angel of the church in Smyrna write, these are the words of him who is the first and the last, who died and who came to life again." In history past, the city of Smyrna died. And many centuries later, it was revived to life by the Romans. Jesus is saying he is God Almighty. He's sovereignly in control. He's the ruler on his eternal throne, past, present, and future, and that nothing then can happen or will happen without his consent. All final outcomes will be determined by him alone. And so he says, I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. I tell you, the devil would put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer persecution for 10 days. Yeah, it wasn't easy to be a Christ follower in Smyrna. They were persecuted for their faith. They were the suffering church. And that's why Jesus emphasized his death and resurrection. And that regardless of what happens, even if it leads to their death, they could have hope in his resurrection. They weren't willing to compromise or to confess Caesar is Lord, but they were willing to take up their crosses, and it cost them. And so Jesus said, I know your afflictions and your poverty. Now, Smyrna was an important Roman city, and it was the center of many different organizations and all of the trade unions and guilds. And for the Smyrna Christians to not confess Caesar as Lord meant that they were certainly rejected from the guilds and almost certainly faced unemployment and poverty. In fact, the word for poverty that Jesus used is abject poverty, possessing absolutely nothing and being shamefully poor in man's eyes. They were despised, they were rejected, they were counted as unworthy. They had nothing in this world that the world had to offer, and yet, in God's eyes, they were rich. They didn't fit in, they didn't belong, they weren't wanted, and yet God's blessing was upon them. Peter had written to the early church some 30 years earlier, in this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may be proved genuine and may result in praise and glory and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. He also said, Dear friends, do not be surprised at the painful trial that you are suffering, as though something strange were happening to you. But rejoice that you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. You know, Jesus says, I know of the slander. I know of the sufferings. Yeah, there was a large group of Jews in Smyrna. And the Jewish religion was accepted by Rome. And so they were exempt from confessing Caesar as Lord. But they were only Jews in name, but not in their heart. And Jesus referred to them as, well, they're not Jews, but they are of the synagogue of Satan, which is very interesting because what he's saying is they were motivated by Satan. And it's really the first time in the book of Revelation where Satan is seen to be the ultimate source of the persecution of all Christians. Jesus had already told his disciples that in this world you will have trials and tribulations, and that some would even be turned over and put to death. And so those in Smyrna, he's saying, suffering Smyrna, you are blessed for walking in my footsteps. Just as he said on the Sermon of the Mount, blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So do not fear what you are about to suffer, but be faithful even until death. Those are not the words that you and I would like to read in a letter from Jesus. He's really saying it's going to get worse before it gets better. And we wonder, why would God allow that? I mean, God would be able to protect and keep them, but that was not his choice. And sometimes God's ways are beyond our ways, but they are always for his eternal glory. And so they were going to be turned over, separated from their families, imprisoned, tortured, and some would even be put to death. But they did remain passionately faithful to Jesus, even under incredible pressure. And so the words of James are very relevant when he said, blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, because when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. So even if they were martyred, they would be ushered into glory wearing their victor's crown. They would never face the awful judgment of the second death. They will not be hurt by the second death. So these are the ones that God says are rich in faith, rich in their relationship with God, rich in the way they live their lives, focused on the eternal kingdom and the Lord Jesus Christ. Sometimes countries that have affluence are not so rich spiritually. And we'll talk about that in the last letter to the Laodiceans. But this is the shortest letter, and this is the letter without any rebuke at all. Poverty, hardship, suffering, like gold, can be refined to bring forth the very best. And that's what God sometimes allows in our lives too. So that's all for this week, but I do want to make a happy announcement that we did receive the $50,000 that we were trying to raise for Cambodia. And so that $50,000 will be matched by someone in our congregation. And hopefully this week or next week, we will send a check for $100,000 to the Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada for that land in Cambodia where the Rollies are. That's exciting. I want to say thank you for your generous giving. Even in the midst of COVID, you've shown once again how you can rise up and give generously. Finally, March 21st is approaching, and that's the day that is set as the goal for opening for the Astor Gardens. I'd like you just to stay tuned for a couple more minutes as we're going to have an interview with Mr. Ali Shivji of Astor Gardens. And this is encouraging, so stick with us. Thank you. Hi, Park Church family. This is a really exciting moment for me as we're right inside Astor Gardens, one of the suites, and I'm standing with Ali Shivji, who's principal of the Optima Living Group. And it's exciting to see how far this building's come, Ali. And tell us a little bit about the progress. When do you hope to open? And tell us a little bit about this beautiful suite that we're in today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Colin, and thanks for having me here. Thanks for coming and visiting us at our home, and hopefully the home of many more. So Astor Gardens is, we are scheduled for first resident on March 21st. Very intentional, as has been the entire design of the building. March 21st is the first day of spring, and we thought that given the fact that Astor Gardens, and the aster is a flower that is a robust flower that flowers in this neighborhood, in this area of the world, and that Astor Gardens is going to be I almost think through it like a garden of very robust flowers that bloom late in the season, like Astor Gardens does. And so we thought the first day of spring is an appropriate day to have first residents move in. So first residents are moving in March 21st. We are excited about today. Furniture deliveries are coming in, so you probably had these trucks coming by because we have furniture coming in, things are going on. It's an exciting time. We got occupancy last week, so you're able to be here without any PPE or other stuff on. And it's an exciting time from that perspective. Tell you about the suite. So when I guess the exciting part, many exciting parts about Astor Gardens, but one of them is how we've gotten to play with and think about all the little aspects of the building that we've learned from the 14 years of work we've been doing in the industry, the now 14 sites that we have across BC and Alberta. And we wanted to be intentional. We wanted to think about all the little things that could make people we could enable them to have the best quality of life. So things like, for instance, we knew that people sometimes have problems with their eyes. And so all of our switches are a different color so that from any sort of macular degeneration perspective, they can see that against the backdrop of a hall. All of the outlets are raised so people don't have to bend down too low when they're going to when they have to plug something in or they have to unplug something. This is a one-bedroom suite. We have studio suites, we have one bedrooms, and then we have two-bedroom suites. We also have a memory care, two memory care neighborhoods that are on our third floor, and they are part of our I was going to say it's not an exclusive program, but we've been developing over the past 5 years. Taking all of our best practices from all of our different neighborhoods around Alberta and BC around memory care. And we've kind of finally created the Optima Brain Health Program, which we're officially inaugurating here, and we've kind of built the two memory care neighborhoods around that program. We've had the program in different ways, but to be able to build a building around it as opposed to the opposite way is a really exciting feature. So we're looking forward to that as well. I'm just trying to think about other stuff that would be helpful. For those of you who don't know much about Astor Gardens, it's an independent living, private pay community. It's all about allowing us to welcome people home. It's all about finding ways that we can enable people to live their best life. And how can we take away the barriers that stop people from doing that? And how can we give back choice in every way, shape, or form so that people have choice, they have purpose, they have engagement, and they're enabled to do what they need to do. So you can eat in one of the 4 places to eat. You can grab and go and walk out the door. You can sit in the formal dining room. You can be in our kind of green terrace on the second floor that has greenery surrounding you and a huge skylight. You can go up and eat in the Rooftop Pub. You can go out onto the patio and you can have a barbecue out there, or you can sit in the private dining room, just from a food perspective. If you want to do activities, you can go to the pool. You can go up to our rooftop garden where we have a putting green, we have a Zen garden, we have gardening areas. If you want to read, you can go and spend time in the lounge. But we've thought of this as it comes back to 3 principles: people, place, and community. People, as I talked about, is all about how do we enable people to live their best life. Place is about creating intimate spaces and places where people can truly engage the way they would like to and the way they would if they were at home. After all, our North Star is let us welcome you home. So we took each floor of this building and thought about it as its own particular place, its own particular neighborhood. And we designed them as such. So on every floor, when you come out of the elevator, you'll walk into a different neighborhood. And each neighborhood has a different feel to it. So if you're on the 6th floor, you would walk out into a games area, a pool table, a poker table, a billiards area, kind of like a fun kind of games area, some fireplaces, a nice sitting lounge. If you're on the 5th floor, you'd walk out into the library and the info commons. So if you're a book lover, if you want to go and search the net or do some stuff online, or you want to curl up with some friends and have an intimate discussion, you'd spend some time on the 5th floor. And the rooms are there as well, so people could, if that's the particular temperament you like, then you could go there. And if you want to be more of a social butterfly, you can come to the 4th floor where our Rooftop Pub is. The pub is there. It's a beautiful area. It also doubles as our theater, so it's got the TVs, it's got the lounge, it's got the the area that you can eat food at. 3rd floor is the art area. The 2nd floor is kind of a competitive games area and then a dining area. 1st floor is the pool, the pharmacy, the doctor's office. We've tried to have everything here so that it's all inclusive.
It's a pretty amazing facility, and it's probably the most beautiful seniors type home that I've ever been in. The units are beautiful, but just the entry areas and all of these various rooms. Tell us, how many people will you be able to, how many suites do you have really? And will COVID hinder that at all?
Yeah, so we have 157 suites in the building. We've had a very robust pipeline of people who have been excited to move in. It's quite an interesting time right now. Within all of our communities across Optima Living, so we have 14 sites across BC and Alberta. We've had pretty much very minimal cases of COVID. Up until October, we had nothing, and afterwards we've had small cases we've been able to manage very, very easily. And so, that comfort of knowing that Astor Gardens is an individual community, but it's backed by an organization that has 14 years of history, large kind of infrastructure, and a real thoughtful approach to how we handle these sorts of things, allows people to feel safe, to be safe, and still interact. So we've got a whole protocol in place for how people will move in, how we'll help them do so, how we'll still allow them to be kind of social within the building even once they move in, and how we think through that with them.
Great. Well, thanks so much for giving us some time, and
My pleasure.
We look forward to your opening on March 21st, and we also look forward as a church family to just engaging with you in relationships and doing what we can to serve and be a blessing to your family here. So This is an exciting time. It's been a couple of years in the process, but we're almost there, and so congratulations on all the wonderful work you've done. I just want to say to the church family, if you would like some more information, you can contact...
The best is to go on our website, astorgardens.ca. All the information's there, the phone numbers, the email addresses, everything that you need is on the website, and it'll probably be the best place to go from that perspective. I'd like to finish with one thing, if I may.
Sure.
When we talked about the principles of Astor, people, place, and community. Community is a huge part about the fundamentals of this. It goes back to the history of why this building was created, which really comes down to the vision of individuals at Park Church. But it talks to that strength of relationship, and it talks to that strength of the fact that we can only be as strong as the community that we surround ourselves with and are part of. And the only way that Astor Gardens will be a vibrant community is to be an active member of the community. And so our desire is that we become that hub, we become a place where people come, that we're interacting regularly, that we're finding ways to have pickleball tournaments there, or we're finding ways to do pool things here, or that this ultimately is a place that we want everyone to be able to treat like it's their home. And whether or not you live here, whether or not you're visiting here, or whether or not you're a member of this broader community, those relationships are very important to us, and we're looking forward to treasuring them, building upon them, and having fun with them. I mean, that's really at the end of the day, like we want people to have fun, and that's what we're looking forward to.
That's great. It'll be a great symbiotic relationship, and we're looking forward to that. So thanks for being with us today. Thanks, Park family. Have a good evening.